Andy Brassel, hello, welcome to the show.
Hello, not only am I approved by you, I'm approved by Everlast. That's pretty good, isn't it?
That's not bad. I'd expect nothing less from you. Listen, thank you as always for coming on. Big fan of yours, you know that. We want to get your views on some of the big movers and shakers that are coming to the Premier League. I obviously will start. I will show no favouritism whatsoever and talk about Manchester United. And Anthony, they've got the greatest player in world football, haven't they?
Yeah, something like that. Either way, I think that they were always going to have to pay the money because Ajax didn't want to let him go. They'd let a lot of other players go this summer. They thought it was one too far. But they needed Manchester United to offer a number that they absolutely couldn't refuse, and that's what happened in the end. I think attaching the value to a lot of these players in Premier League circles, it's just not worth it because we know Premier League clubs can afford it. They know they can afford it. The clubs who are selling to them know they can afford it. So he needs work. I think that's fair to say, but he's already hit hard in the Champions League. I think where he's going to be used gives Ten Hag the kind of front three that he wants, probably I think Rashford or Martial in the centre, Anthony on the left foot from the right-hand side, Jadon Sancho maybe on the right foot from the left, which is where he was at Southampton at the weekend, obviously. What I love about Anthony is not the ball tricks. It's not the fact that I think he can score even more goals going forward. I think it's the fact that he can take being kicked. And so I think a lot of attacking players find that a bit of a jump when they arrive in the Premier League. You look at someone who's as strong as Darwin Núñez, for example. I think the whole situation where he gets sent off against Crystal Palace kind of comes from the fact that he's used to getting a lot of easy free kicks and he's not getting them anymore. Well, when Anthony gets put on his face, he'll get up again and he'll have another go. I think he'll grow into being a great player for Manchester United.
That's nice to hear. You use the word great as well. Listen, I've seen him on YouTube. I know everyone's a great YouTube player, but he does have magic in his boots. I don't want to compare him to Ronaldo, but my question is, when Ronaldo came over from Sporting, he had all these tricks and flicks, and it took him a little bit of time to adjust to the Premier League. Do you think the same will be said about Anthony? Will it take him time to adjust or not?
I don't know about that because we've already seen him perform at Champions League level, whereas when Ronaldo came over, he was an 18-year-old. I think there's a big difference. You know, he's got experience of going deep in the best club competition that there is for a very good side, and I think he can contribute immediately. Do I think there's a ceiling for him to get better? Absolutely.
When you look at the money, and I know you said it there...
he's going to be negative here now.
No, 85,
he is.
No, listen, 85 million.
Yeah. Money well spent.
Could he kind of break the mould? And when I say that, when you look at some of the transfers into the Premier League for over 70 million, you'd probably say Van Dijk's the only one that's worked. The likes of Pepe and Kai Havertz, Kepa, Pogba, Lukaku, Grealish, even 100 million, Jadon Sancho. Do you think he'd be the one that breaks the mould and will be worth closer to the 85 million than maybe some of the names I just suggested?
It's a really interesting question, Darren. But I think from each one of those, they're all separate situations. I don't think they're all cut from the same sort of mould. I mean, like, take Kepa, for example. If he's at any club other than Athletic Bilbao, Chelsea get him for like 50 million or maybe even less. It's just the fact that they won't sell players for anything below the buyout clause because they can only buy Basque players. Jadon Sancho actually came a bit cheaper than was originally touted. I think, you've got a situation at Manchester United, and this would be the concern, I think, for Anthony. The fact that United have not been good at making good players get better over the last 5 years or so. That is the problem for them, and that is the job for Erik Ten Hag. Not just for Anthony, but for those existing players who are there who we know can do more.
Right, if I want your opinion, I'll ask for Andy, all right? Moving on. I'd like your opinion, please, on West Ham's new player. £51 million spent on Lucas Paquetá. What kind of player are they getting for someone that looks relatively cheap, bearing in mind some of the money that Bent has just been talking about?
Well, firstly, Andy, I would have Tim Vickery in my ear if I didn't point out to you it's Paquetá. Paquetá.
Is it Paquetá? Hold on a minute. You told me it's Griezmann, and everyone knows it's Griezmann. So how is it pronounced Paquetá?
Right, honestly, since I've stopped training you the pronunciations on Sunday nights, it's gone all out the window. Right, look at the back of his shirt. It's got the little tick upwards on the A, which says the emphasis is on the A. So it's not only me that says that, it's his West Ham shirt that says that. He is going to be really good for them, I think. They're buying someone who's a starter for Brazil, and that's why when they were trying to get him on the cheap from Lyon, they were like, come on, man, this is a guy who's in the 11 from Brazil, and he's been brilliant for them over the last year or so. Now, I think it's the right time for him to move. I think it's a good move for him to come to the Premier League, especially as he's a flair player, again, who can really handle himself. He can make tackles. He can play deeper for Brazil if he needs to. They've tried him out in that deeper position. I think he'll be something really special for them, especially in his first season at Lyon. He was absolutely fantastic. Once Juninho, the sporting director and Lyon's best ever player, fellow Brazilian, and Bruno Guimarães, his best mate, went last January, he struggled a little bit, and the team wasn't at its best either, so he wasn't at his best, and it felt like time for a freshening. But, he's ready to go straight away. He is that sort of character that needs a bit of personal love and care, but if you tickle his tummy, he'll do the stuff for you.
Okay, sounds like Darren Bent. just pronounce his surname one more time for me.
Paquetá.
Paquetá, okay.
All right. So, Andy, you spoke about him there, Paquetá, and when you look at what West Ham have got in midfield, the likes of Souček, Declan Rice, do you expect him to be the third body in that midfield, or could you see him playing maybe him and Rice and one other?
I think he could play in that deeper position, Darren, but really, you want to see him dribbling around players. You want to see him playing the last pass. You want to see the ball tricks. You want to see him scoring goals, because he's scored lots of goals in big games since he's at Lyon. In fact, when they were completely out of centre forwards, when Moussa Dembélé, formerly of Celtic, of course, broke his arm last season, he actually played at centre forward. Now, he didn't like it very much, but he was really good at it. So you're looking at a guy who, this is part of the reason that he's worth the money. You look at the fact that he can look after himself, he can win tackles, he can go around players, he can dribble, he can play that decisive pass, and he can score goals. And he can play in probably like 3 different positions with a really good level of effectiveness. Makes him totally worth it, in my opinion.
Okay. Before I talk about the next player from Atletico to Nottingham Forest, is there an accent over any of the 4 letters of his surname?
No, he takes Ren for short, I think.
Okay, so I can just say Ren rather than Ren, Lodi, Ludai?
No, I'm pulling your leg there. Ren and Lodi.
Okay. Tell me a bit about, I saw Steve Cooper this morning on Sky Sports. They're chatting to him about any more players coming in, and he wouldn't rule it out. I think they're up to 18, 20 might be coming as well. I don't know where it's going to stop, but what do you make of this signing? On loan, of course.
I think it's a really great signing. You do wonder where that line is going to be for Nottingham Forest when they've got enough. But I think Lodi is a huge upgrade. This is a guy who was good in the Champions League last season for Atletico, who played at left back. He's a very attacking left back. So once Reinildo came in, a sort of left centre back for them, and they started playing with a back 3, he got released to play in that sort of left wing back role. I thought he was brilliant against Manchester United in particular. He is a player who's very, very accomplished already. Now, he was left out of the team at the start of this season, and the line that has been peddled, and I've seen peddled over here, is he needed to get minutes before the World Cup. That makes it sound like he wasn't in Atletico's first choice 11. Basically, they are operating very, very close to the salary cap, which is part of the reason they've got this whole Antoine Griezmann situation that I'm sure we'll go into some other time.
Griezmann.
But Griezmann. Anyway, like Renan Lodi was basically being forced out because he was sellable. Because, as you'll know, there's a 30 million buyout clause if Forest want to make it permanent going next year. And I think it'll have a big impact. And whether it's at Forest or anywhere else in the Premier League next season, I'm sure he will be in England next season because I think he'll do very well.
Wow. And Andy, I just want to speak to you about Koundé now finally registered at Barcelona. What happened then? How come they managed to get this one over the line?
More salary cuts, Darren, quite simply. I don't know how many times they can ask the old guys who've been there forever for salary cuts. As well, they were they're selling still parts of their commercial operation, their TV rights. If they want to sign anyone else, and I think they still need defenders. I look at them and they're beautiful going forward. Not so much at the back, although Koundé being able to play is obviously a big plus for them. They definitely need some cover at left back. So you talk about teams that keep on going and going and going when you think it's way too much in the transfer window. Well, Barcelona are one of those. And I wouldn't rule something out before the closure of the deadline, especially if they manage to get rid of Memphis and Aubameyang.
Well, that was my next question, Andy. Could you see Aubameyang, because he's been linked to Chelsea heavily and Manchester United? Do you think that deal will get done?
Yeah, I think he probably will end up back in the Premier League, to be honest. And I think if you were going to give an audition for why a Premier League club should want you, the time that he's been at Barcelona is a great audition, because, you know, you think of him as a great goal scorer who does absolutely nothing off the ball, whereas that's certainly what he was for most of his time at Arsenal, with a few notable exceptions. But he's put in a real shift off the ball as well at Barcelona, as well as scoring really, really consistently. I mean, I'd sign him in a flash. I think he's still a really good centre forward. I think we can think of a few clubs who could definitely benefit from him. I think Barcelona need to not overplay their hand, because they started asking 25 million euros for a player who we know is still a very good player, as we've just touched on, but a player who they picked up for nothing, and Arsenal paid most of his wages last summer. I know there's no such thing as brazen cheat when it comes to Barcelona and transfer dealings, but really, if they want to get him off the wage bill and they want to get a little bit of cash for him, they should settle for that.
Okay. One last question. I'm putting you on the spot here, so if you don't know the answer, don't worry. Out of all the deals that have been done by Premier League clubs, who do you think's done the best business? One player.
One player?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really, really tough one. I do like Paquetá for West Ham, because at one point Manchester City were interested if Bernardo Silva went, and then it became clear that Bernardo Silva wasn't going to be able to go, partly because of the Barcelona situation and because PSG couldn't get their ducks in a row as well. So I think, given that he's a player who Manchester City would have taken on and he's ended up at West Ham, I think if you're a Hammers fan, you're taking that all day, aren't you?
Okay. That is the wrong answer. Of course, the answer I was looking for was Anthony.